Up again.
Silent all around the line. If they get the chance, they were born in bloody circumstance. To go, leave me, run like you've never run before. Underground, given room to breathe, not but be drowned. So die if you get the chance. Better men than you've been left this dance. To go, leave me, run like you've never run before. I've seen the worst, and there is nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Scottish Rugby Podcast brought to you by the Scottish Rugby Blog. I am Cammy Black. We've got quite a bit to get through this evening because all of the rugby has started, certainly in Scotland anyway. And joining me to wade through all of the rugby, we've got Craig Manson. Good evening, Craig.
Good evening.
And fresh from, I would say fresh from the stage, but fresh from being live in Butte, we have Ian here. Good evening, Ian.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Good evening, Scottish rugby.
For people that don't know,
Ian, we were in
John...
the English Rugby Podcast last night, and it was rubbish. So
you were your band. We've got John and Ian have got a band with friends of the pod, and
one-time contributor.
Rona Sweeting as well. And how did that go? Gig live in Butte this weekend, Ian?
Musically, quite well. Numerically, there's quite a lot of people to start with, but as one of my mates who came along, Jim, Big Scouse Jim, what was this? I was trying to do a restart on my computer. Wait, pick it. Right, sorry. Yes, we were up against Anthony Joshua. Completely forgot that was on, so pubs that were showing that, obviously.
Boxing big in Butte, is it?
Well, I didn't spend much time on the high street, but rumours abound.
Well,
but yes,
it sounds like it went well. Anyway. Good.
Yeah, it went all right. Yeah, not a lot of people. There's people who we didn't pay started dancing.
Well,
so that was
that's good.
Yeah.
That's always a good sign, isn't it?
Mhm.
Good stuff. Well, you can. What's the name of the band again?
Screamshot, which I think
Screamshot.
sounds like a rejected Decepticon.
I was just about to say that. I thought it did sound like a reject. Who was the wee tape thing that turned into a bird?
Oh,
man.
It's a
there was
Starscream.
Yes.
Starscream. And he went into the one that turned into a ghetto blaster. Couldn't have that these days. Be
I had
pointless.
that. I had that toy.
Did you?
It'd
I
be
had the original.
Nano Transformers.
Well, you couldn't you couldn't have like an iPhone with a tape that went inside it, could you?
Convert it into an MP3 file.
Anyway, we're not here to talk about Transformers. You can watch us live, as some people are doing at the moment. We're live on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and you can also download the podcast as an audio podcast afterwards on Apple Podcast, Acast, Spotify. If you want bonus weekly content, then you can sign up to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast from £3 a month. If you pay £5 a month, you get your name read out on the podcast and our eternal gratitude as well. What happens now is you get this normal podcast if you don't subscribe to the Patreon with adverts. We talk for about an hour about what's gone on this week, but then the Patreons get an extra bonus episode where we have a bit of a rant. That's where we do Hands in the Ruck now, basically, because we were going over an hour every week. And so we thought we'll just split it in two. It's far easier. So if you want Hands in the Ruck, you got to pay for it. That's the bottom line. If you want to hear us swear, you got to pay for it. That's
F and A.
Yeah. So this week there's been lots of news, but I think we kind of focus on the three big things that happened this week. We've got Scotland versus Ireland, which we'll talk about in a minute. Then we'll talk a bit about the United Rugby Championship first weekend, and then we'll do Super Six at the end. Scotland women versus Ireland. Then wow. I don't want to say who saw that coming, but we kind of saw that coming, I guess, Craig, because we talked on last week's podcast about the kind of the mental resilience of the women's team and not letting the heads drop and playing to the end and looking for the small wins in games and letting those build. And I think that game was absolute testament to that.
Very much so. The game itself seemed to ebb and flow between both Ireland and Scotland, and I'll tell you what, it was a passionate affair. So, but just having that resilience at the end, and just Sarah Law and her absolutely cool head, all that pressure on her shoulders, and just a fabulous end to a nail biter of a fixture. So I know that a lot of people will say, "Oh, we would rather it have been a lot clearer, a lot bigger gap between the two." But that's a way to get a last minute gasp finish. It was very, very good.
But Ireland are a top side, though, Ian. I mean, that's the bottom line here. And I think for Scotland to pull off that result is no easy thing, and under that pressure as well.
Yeah, I believe they were semi-finalists as recently as 2014. Obviously, Philip Doyle had a spell there, and then he had such a good input in the Scotland team. So yeah, they usually finish above us in the Six Nations as well. I say usually pretty much all the time now. And they turned over Italy, so who had given us a good spanking. So it just shows, Scotland women, they get a couple of more weeks time spent together. I just thought they looked a lot stronger defensively. As opposed to Italy, we were carved to shreds. It's a tremendous win. Yeah,
defense is still a concern, though, Craig. I would say I don't want to be too down on them because it's after a phenomenal win, but there was still a lot of slipping off tackle, particularly the first Ireland try. There was a lot of looking like you were going for a tackle and slipping off a bit too easily. They're going to have to tighten that up if going into whatever this next tournament looks like.
Yeah, very much so. I think in the review on a Monday morning, I think there'll be a couple of people, not giving a given a shouting or a hairdryer, I should say. But they should be shown them slipping off, because the slip off tackles weren't. It wasn't like they'd put in a big tackle and they'd just been, the person had walked through them. It was a proper half-hearted slip-off tackle, and it was just a shame, because it gave Ireland, in such a pressurised game, you would expect someone to put that tackle in as hard as they possibly can. But I'm an old guy standing back and watching the game. I'm not there in the pressure that these guys, this team is under, and I don't want ever to turn around and people to think, what are you talking about? You're an old fart just telling us that we can't tackle, But also Ireland didn't help themselves as well.
Yeah, that's true. Emma Wassel, though, Ian, 50 caps, 50 consecutive caps.
I've come up with a nickname for her, World Class Was.
Oh,
nice.
There we go.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal achievement, to play in that attritional position, and play 50 times in a row. Is it 48 starts now? I think it's the first two were replacements, and it's been 48 since. And usually one of the best players on the park, for both sides. It's no surprise that she's now been given a sort of professional contract. So yes, another incredible performance from her. And she's been key, in all the good Scotland victories of note, because she's played in every single bloody game. It's an amazing thing to have done. Yeah, and we did put her in our hardest players of the 10s shortlist, didn't we?
We did, yeah. I think that went. She was in there for that, just for the, like you said, just to make that number of appearances. And
I think she was on 44 at the time or something. It's 45 maybe. Yeah. So.
It was only about. Christ, that podcast was only about a month ago as well.
The game's gone thick and fast.
Aye, but I mean, again, Craig, the attack went well this week. There seemed to be a lot more shifting from defence to attack. Seemed to have improved a lot. Turning good defence into attack seemed to work well. There were, the tries were taken really well. It's the building, so you can see there's something building there from where they were at the start of the tournament to where they've ended up.
Yeah, I think Ian hit the nail on the head, to be perfectly honest. I think they've had time together, and they've had time to come together and properly train. Nobody can underestimate the effect of being together with a team. As a team helps, and you learn to fight for each teammate, and it just just as Ian said, bringing them together for a longer time has really helped them. Yeah,
and I suppose that goes to what we were saying a few weeks ago, that shows the merits of having a more professional setup in Scotland. If you're going to, the talent is there within the Scotland women's setup. It's just time together, and the only way you're going to do that is by putting more resources in. And if you put more resources in, it's going to pay dividends.
Sorry, Ian, you go.
Yeah, no, that's. I'm currently skimming through the Offside Line article about Mark Dodson and Jim Jeffries. Said they're going to support the qualification, just checking if they're actually putting a number to it. But yes, obviously resources need to be realigned, because what would the amount of money that they could probably get from TV rights for qualifying to the big show will probably outweigh what they'd have to outlay, I would hope, even just to get them together for a few months.
I think it also... Sorry, Ian.
Well, obviously there's work commitments and that to try and figure out, but come on.
Now's the time, because if you look at, and this, I'm going to say this, and it's not, I feel really it's pretty horrendous for the teams that are involved, but if you look at Ireland and Wales at the moment, they're in chaos at this moment in time. So Scotland are putting they are backing Scotland women. They may not be financially putting a huge amount of money behind them, but if they increase that, now's the time, and they will. We can. The team can get higher in the rankings. and have a great World Cup if they get there.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, the bottom line is the talent is there, and it's putting resources into it. The team are only going to get better, like you said, Craig. They rise up the rankings, and that then pays back. Then
Mm.
in more exposure leads to sponsorship, leads to better performances, prize money, even and stuff like that. It's all cyclical, but Scotland are starting from from quite a low base point, I would say, compared to Wales and Ireland, who have pretty much scrapped their women. Wales have pretty much scrapped their entire women's professional setup. Ireland have scaled theirs back. So Scotland are actually in, like Ian said, they're in a better position because there's nothing to scale back. It's a case of scaling it up now, and there's the. You can't tell me there aren't the resources somewhere to do it. There isn't some money you couldn't take from somewhere else to support that somehow. Take a bit off the men's. How is it? Rona Lloyd saying, the fees that the men get. I think she was talking about the England men because it was a response to something Will Greenwood said. But say the amount that an England player gets for one appearance in an England shirt, she could live off for a year.
Yeah.
And that's so there will be the men's match fees. I'm not saying you take them all the way altogether, but could you reduce them? Could you speak to the men and say we want to give more to the women?
Skim a little off the top, just to be 20% here or there, something like that.
Well, if you think about the take that's coming in from the autumn tests alone, because if you look at the ticket prices, we've already had a moan about, or we've had a conversation about the ticket prices last week. If you look at even just the difference, if you take the difference in what they for the England game where they've stopped giving concessions for children. If you look at that difference in that amount of money that's going to come in, that would help. They're going to make a certain amount of money out of everybody for the Autumn Nations if they just if they put some of that aside and invested it. The women's game will give so much more than they put in, than the SRU will put in. And I think now is the time. We are now, we constantly talk about being on the right side of history. Now is the time.
I was thinking about this weekend. I think there's looking at the way that the URC has started and all the kind of, obviously they've kind of bombarded social media with clips of the games. There was the interview with the guy from Rock Nation saying, we're kind of suggesting that they allow fans to post game footage without sanction, because ultimately it's an advert it's free advertising for the game. Now I would be surprised if Rock Nation aren't having a conversation saying, where is your women's competition in all this? Because there's an opportunity there to add that to the brand of the United Rugby Championship, to have a shadow women's not a women's team for every franchise, but a women's team for every union that's involved. Wouldn't be a massive ask. And they've got the WNBA in America.
Yeah,
kind of shadowing the NBA, and that's something Rock Nation have been heavily involved in. That has to be the next step, that we start looking at professional women's rugby as a product that you can sell. And it's like we said, it's good quality rugby. If you're, like we've said before, if you're somebody that hates modern men's international rugby, go and watch a women's game, because the quality is right up there, and it's just a different style of game.
Very much so. Yeah.
About a merger with the is it still the Tyrrells 15s, the Premiership in England? There was
talk a while ago of Scotland trying to get a franchise into the Premier 15s.
Because if it was just like one team from each union with the URC, it would get pretty dull pretty quickly.
Probably would do, to be fair.
So, but and also, they'd be looking at, Rock Nation could be thinking, well, that's us edged into the English market now. What else is in there? Let's see how we get on here.
Yeah. Well, they've already in there because they represent Maro Itoje.
Yeah.
So
in his Range Rover.
yeah, the M&S sponsorship. He's sponsored by M&S now. Been wandering around with these high-waisted slacks and comfortable pants.
And he always get a brat fit him.
His hush puppies.
Excellent refund policy.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, that like you said, Craig, that's got this. This is an opportunity now. It's women's rugby in Scotland's now in the shop window, and you would hope the team can now go further. And there's the next tournaments they've got. So they're going to be in a tournament now, we think, against Samoa, who are the qualifiers from Asia, and then it is also the winner of Kenya and Colombia's playoff.
I thought it was Colombia were already in.
Are they? I'm reading the BBC article from the weekend, so maybe it's Colombia already in.
No, because I thought it was Samoa and Colombia were in, and then it was the winner of a Pan-Asian. I think that was before the Italy game, but I think that was Rugby World.
Yeah, well, this is the BBC saying post the weekend that Scotland will now join Samoa, the runners-up of the Asian qualifying tournament. No, so I think I've misread it. So it's the way they've written the sentence. They will now join Samoa, the runners-up of the Asian qualifying tournament and the winners of Kenya and Colombia's playoff in the final qualifying tournament. I thought they meant that Samoa were the runners-up of the Asian qualifying tournament. I think it means...
No, they should have put the winners of the... They should have done that as the and the winners of... So, Kenya, Colombia should have been the middle part. And then they should have and the runners-up of...
I might come on to the BBC's coverage of Scottish rugby later on. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how that goes. We'll keep an eye on it. We'll cover it at the time. But yeah, phenomenal result, phenomenal game.
And our sentences won't be confusing.
No, and just as a bunch of players, they just look like they're having the most fun, and that's always good to see, because I think that's always a mark of a good team. And we saw, we've seen it with Scotland more recently, and I think when you start to see that kind of stuff coming out of camp, teams that are having fun together tend to play well together. There was I think it was Hannah Smith that posted the team photo, and they were all just kind of messing about. It's a team photo, they're all messing up with each other's hair and laughing, and they just look like they're a very close-knit team. So hopefully they can stay together for a few years and get a good run as results.
Absolutely.
So United Rugby Championship kicked off then this weekend, finally. What do you want to do? How do you want to do this? Should we do Glasgow or Edinburgh first?
Well, Glasgow were first, so let's
go Glasgow. Go on, Ian, then. Glasgow.
We'll end on a high, shall we?
Look, overall, that was a good result for Glasgow. I know it could have gone better, but it's against Ulster. Glasgow played some good rugby, and
yeah, I mean, usually if you said came away from Ulster with 2 bonus points, you'd bite your hand off. But I've only caught up with it today, obviously, because I was away at the weekend. But I saw a bit of it, and that feels like it was one that got away. There was some, the attacking play now looks to have shape and structure, because we actually have number 10s playing at 10. And Tui Piloto, he showed why he's been brought in. Just he absolutely thumped that boy Balogun down to the floor. Tremendous stuff. But yeah, it does feel like one that got away, because it was a little bit haphazard defensively. I think it was Johnny said in the group chat, like Ulster had to make over 200 tackles. Glasgow had to make something like 79.
Yep. And 13 of those were little George Horn. Yeah,
which is he's been made like a sixth of all the tackles. That's incredible. What is going on? So it feels like one that got away. Feel free to add anything, gentlemen.
No, it was a strange game. I think that it shows how well Glasgow played that an Irish pundit gave Rory Darge man of the match in a game that Glasgow lost. It's not. unheard of for an Irish pundit. Even even if Glasgow had won, they'd be looking for an excuse to give it to an Ulster player normally.
Yeah.
John Cooney for 18 excellent minutes. No, Rory Darge really is. He's cloned Mish. By the looks of things, absolutely brilliant performance from him. The leg drive for the JB Dobie try, which ends up it kind of takes out 3 Ulster players. That's such a pivotal carry in that move. I thought Jack Dempsey had a very good game as well. He just looks like quite a big unit. So he took on a lot of carrying work. Don't know. I think he usually plays at 8, but seems suited enough to the role. Ryan Wilson doing Ryan Wilson things.
I actually think Dempsey could really fill in for the Givens role. He's the hardened back rower who will go in and sort things out when things go go slightly awry. I think Darge was fantastic. I think Glasgow certainly shouldn't walk away from that game thinking things are wrong. I saw one post on Facebook about this is just typical underfunding by the SRU, etc. I'm thinking, hang on a minute, you just lost against Ulster, who I think are going to be the next. They've got a good chance of winning this year, and it was in Belfast at the Kingspan. That's a lot of pressure on those guys. It was just, I think, really, to be honest, it was just two guys who haven't got a huge amount of experience. They're coming through that just made a couple of wee mistakes, and it just cost them the game. And I think that's I think they should be. I think all Glasgow fans should be pretty happy with that, with what happened.
I felt really bad. Was it Jamie Dobie chased down the Ulster player and almost got the turnover for an Ulster snatch the try? I mean, the commitment to chase that back and then get back up and then get up and almost get the turnover was phenomenal. And to have that, I think we haven't seen that commitment from Glasgow players in the past seasons, that kind of commitment to defence. But yeah, obviously there's work to do still.
It's like Thompson looks a real deal to me. Ross Thompson looks a real deal to me. He no disrespect to Dunky Weir, but he certainly showed Dunky Weir a clean pair of heels when he came on at 10, and showed everyone. He just, unfortunately, it was just a small mistake, and I kind of agree with the pundits that were on when I was watching the game that they were kicking it at inopportune times out with maybe a game plan that they had, which was just a shame because it looked like it was going to be a good result for Glasgow.
Again, that kind of the Forbes staying, and was it Rufus McLean was playing as well in the back three? That looks like a tasty back three now. I mean, and like Glasgow been struggling for 15 since Hogg left, Ian. So you happy with the way that's shaping up?
There's also Josh Mackay to come in as well. I think Cancellieri can maybe also possibly cover 15. Forbes, I'm a big fan of, but it'd be nice if he could spend 80 minutes on the park more often. Because I believe that's the third yellow card he's had. I can certainly remember another one for a deliberate knock-on, which I think also led to a penalty try against Leinster. I think it was the Adam Hastings Kung Fu kick game. And I'm sure he's received at least one other yellow card. I mean, does he really have a chance to go for it? I mean, this double whammy is the problem. Do you actually just let them score? Because they're probably going to go in at the corner, and it makes the kick harder. But instead, you end up giving away 7 points, and you're off the park for 10 minutes, which ended up being a relatively profitable 10 minutes for Glasgow. But nonetheless,
but it's fixable. Well, that kind of stuff's fixable, though, isn't it? You can work on his decision making.
Yeah, but it's been, it's been a constant through the Wilson era. It's the discipline and defence has been the problem. The attack now seems to be coming in. And I think there's some nice rugby being played. I thought the Dobie try, Thompson showed great composure. not to just keep chucking it wide. He sort of stopped, looked at his options, took his man on the inside, and he's like, there you go, Jamie. There's a wee simple running for you. So that was encouraging. But it's just yellow cards. We need to see a reduction in yellow cards this season. And red cards, but now that Ioanni's away, that should be a little bit easier.
But it's a promising start anyway. I mean, it probably feels to me like Glasgow have got the makings of a good squad now. There's not many areas that you would say they're weak in.
Yeah, and there's still, the commentator said there was 13 players missing, 3 of them being away with Argentina, Cancellieri, Miotti, and Pieretto. Sorry, that's it, yeah. I don't know can't think who the other 10 were.
We got Price, Ferguson to come back. I think Matt Ferguson's
as well,
injured.
And also, there's plenty to choose from. And it looks...
I think that's kind of going to be the difficulty. It has been Glasgow's difficulty for the last few seasons is they have 3 very good scrum halves. And if this new URC format means that there aren't going to be clashes with internationals, then Jamie Dobie might be struggling for game time, which would be a shame.
I would like to think, given that Price is coming off a Lions tour, they will be a bit more flexible with his rest periods. They want, obviously, if it's a tough game, if it's a big European game or against one of the top quality sides, they might want to, sort of push him a little bit. But when you've got the quality of Hornito and Dobie behind, you need to give them game time. So I think you can certainly start to trust them against big sides. Because a lot of the time they have, when they've been forced into the action, they've performed more than well enough.
Yeah. Anything else on Glasgow? Happy? We've covered. I don't want to force you to go through any more than you have to, Ian.
No, that's all right. Well, I thought set piece looked all right. Scrum, we didn't lose that many scrum penalties. I don't think we did we give any away?
Didn't give any away.
No, Dempsey seemed to it looked like we were moving backwards quite a few times, but Dempsey handled everything quite nicely. So that's encouraging. And also because seeing as Ulster small, I think they did say they scored something like 17 tries last season with it. We gave away a couple of penalties, but thankfully no tries this time because they have used that as a real potent weapon. But Richie Gray, having a giant in your line out is always a handy thing, and he's also good in the maul as well.
Yeah. Good. Let's talk about Emra then, Craig.
Come on.
Well, should we start? I want to talk about the stadium to start with. Now, you did kind of shoot yourself in the foot by sending me and Johnny and everybody a photo of you at the stadium with the words "not a pillar in sight." And as Johnny pointed out, there were 12 pillars behind you on the other side of the pitch.
I couldn't. The thing was, I was so excited I couldn't see them. I was looking past them. I also said it was really busy, and then you said there's not a lot of people in that photo, and it's actually it was an hour before kickoff.
Yeah.
So,
but it was. But I mean, that was a hell of a noise on the telly. It seemed like a really good atmosphere. Was there a noticeable difference, do you think, from games gone by at Murrayfield or Myerside?
It's night and day, Cammy. It is night and day. I think I've just my review's just gone up on the blog, and the last 5 minutes of the game where Edinburgh would usually capitulate and Scarlets would score, because Scarlets had a good chance of scoring a couple of times at the end of the game. The noise was absolutely up there, and it would have got lost in Murrayfield. It would have just been up in the rafters. You wouldn't, you'd hear them, but you wouldn't have heard it on the, as visceral as it was. Okay, fair enough. I was right in the middle of it. The Lothian stand's a fairly loud place to be, but it really felt that as Mike Blair said, we were all the 16th man, and it was I'm very, very excited by the new place, and I think it's going to be a fantastic place to go and watch some phenomenal rugby.
Yeah, we'll I think in Hands in the Ruck we might go through some of the Emra players' music selections. Because there are some absolute. I mean, Grant Gilchrist choosing status quo just feels very on brand for Grant Gilchrist.
Yeah, definitely.
But and there's some others on there. The one that I want to talk about though is, and when I saw it, I was scratching my head. It just said Darcy Graham, and then next to it said Yabba Dabba Doo / the Can, and then in the place where it should have said the name of the artist, it just said custom.
Yeah.
And so I was like, has he made that up himself? Has he done his own song? Right. And then I messaged you at the weekend. I said, well, what was it? And you're like going, well, we could hear the can, but everyone was singing it and dancing along because obviously he scored 2 tries at the weekend.
Yeah.
Oh, everyone's going crazy for the can. It was amazing. And I was like, well, where's Yabba Dabba Doo come into it? So we got in contact with Ember Rugby and said, look, what is it with Darcy's theme tune? What is it? And they said, no, and if you listen, I could just about hear it on the telly. It is Fred Flintstone shouting "Yabba Dabba Doo," and then they play the can immediately after it. And and Embra's DJ has put it together for him at his own request. So yes, Darcy Graham has created his own scoring music, which is, I mean, that's for that level of attention to detail, because everybody else has just gone, just play something, and Darcy's gone, do you know what? Play me something that will get people on their feet. And apparently it was something he's seen at the Euros. That's the feedback we had. He saw something at the Euros. And I think he's genuinely put some thought into that and going, if I score, what is going to get that stadium rocking? And the can is an absolute genius selection, because
you just couldn't believe it coming. It was the noise, mind you. I think Darcy was electric anyway on Saturday, but you know, I guess it's one of those situations. I think we all got a bit carried away too, because it was such a close game, and there was and we're in the new place and all this, that, and the other. But the place was absolutely jumping, and I've never been the only way I can describe it, and please, you don't have to write in and take me apart for it, viewers and listeners, but it's when Scotland, that pass went to Hugh Jones from Finn Russell against in the Calcutta Cup. The place was jumping, and we, as an Edinburgh fan, and the Edinburgh fans had the place jumping like that on a smaller scale. There's only 5,500 people there, but it felt like it was full, and it felt the noise was just absolutely fantastic. It was great, absolutely great.
While we're speaking about Darcy Graham, let's talk about him, because I think the Mike Blair era of Edinburgh playing more attacking rugby, you could see instantly the impact that has had on Darcy Graham. And let's not, Darcy Graham has had a hell of a year.
Yeah.
Because, his brother was in a car crash, and he's talked about that now. He was in the Scotland camp, and his brother was quite badly injured in hospital at the time. And, despite that, he played some good rugby. Maybe not his best rugby, but played some good rugby. And you could see what it meant to him to be in that stadium and be obviously given permission to play rugby the way he wants to play. I mean, his second try, where he pops up off Vellacott's shoulder and just shoots through. I mean, that he did that for Scotland a couple of times in Six Nations, but have you ever seen him do that for Edinburgh that much before, Craig?
Not really. No, he's always been on the end of a ball. He's always been down the wing. The ball's come out through the backs, and then he's been on the end of it. But if you look at both his tries, the one off Mata, when Vellacott rescued the ball out the ruck, and put it onto Mata. Mata thundered down. He was right. He got it right off Mata again and bounced off two Scarlets players in his usual whirlwind spinning best, and then continued on. And he was going so quick that he fell over himself, and then had to get up and put the ball down. So I kind of equate it to, he's almost like James Brown when he comes on with his jacket on and he's all like, oh, sore and and he's walking like as if he's really sore, and then all of a sudden he throws the jacket off and goes, "Let's go!" And he seems to have done that with Edinburgh, especially over the last year. Fair enough, he's had a really tough time, but also I think he was being smothered and getting fed up with the lack of ball within Edinburgh rugby, and I think he's being challenged now to do a job. and yeah, absolutely fantastic. Electric on Saturday.
Yeah. Let's talk about Embers fly half then, Ian. Blair Kinghorn fly half. We've been scathing about it in the past, but it looks like it might work.
Does it? Arguable. I actually still had 15 minutes of the game left to watch by the time we came on. I don't think it's a long-term solution. I mean, I thought the whole reason James Lang had come up, no, he wanted to play 12, didn't he?
Yeah.
That's that out. We'll see. Obviously it's going to take time for him to bed into that position. It didn't go very well in Paris when he played there at 10. As I'm sure Craig remembers, quite savagely.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
No worries, here to help. I don't see it being a long-term option. No. Do you?
Well, to be honest, from what I know, Mike Blair is a huge fan of him at 10. And they've been, and I've got to say, for me, he opened my eyes on Saturday. Okay, fair enough. I'm maybe suffering a bit of a hangover from being excited at the Dam Stadium, the Dam Health Stadium. But he looked like he knew what he was doing. He looked like he had control. And then when he took it on, he took it on. What I think where Blair Kinghorn succeeds is he's quite a rangy runner. If he takes someone on on a soft shoulder, he's going to get a good chance of getting through and getting his hands clear of the tackle so he can pass the ball. And he did it well. That he took his try very well when he put it to Bennett. And Bennett burst through, and he was just doing a George Horn line, and picked up the ball from him. I'm always a great fan of someone who can score a try and then put the conversion over himself as well. And so it's I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid just yet, but I think it's I think he
did. For me, he did better than I was expecting him to do. I was impressed. I think, but that's from a baseline of I wasn't. If it'd been any other fly half, I maybe wouldn't have been. If I'm thinking about it, I maybe would have been, okay, that was okay. I was impressed because it was Blair Kinghorn, if that makes sense.
Kind of gives it an extra point, sort of thing.
It's like, yeah, it kind of tips it over and going, I can see where that's going. I can see that might not be a bad thing. I could see it developing, but also it might just as well stall as well. So we'll see. The other one we had was Martin Bell's comment. This is impressed by the impact that Ben Vellacott has had. Imagine if he'd been Finlay Crispy. I can't tell if Craig's frozen or not. Craig has frozen.
Oh, Craig seems to have disappeared.
Craig's disappeared.
Oh, no.
I thought he was just grinning. I thought he was just stunned by my analysis of Blair Kinghorn at fly half. Ben Vellacott
voice is gone.
Given that Martin Bell says it, imagine it had been Finlay Christie though.
Oh well, keep dreaming.
We'll never know now.
No,
he's capped.
His Crowded House sign, don't dream it's over, but it is over.
Yeah. But I mean, it's nice. I mean, I feel it's nice for Ember to have a decent scrum half. I mean, Charlie Shields. Charlie Shields got. So I think the problem with Charlie Shields is Charlie Shields was stuck on the end of 20 minutes and asked to do the impossible. Whereas actually, Ben Vellacott's.
Yeah, obviously Vellacott's. The game plan was maybe a little stifled under Cockrell, which I believe is one of the many reasons he's gone. But Vellacott, obviously he's got top level experience. I played in the Premiership for a good couple of years, and he seems to certainly have a couple of amazing breaks. That tipped quick tap and bolt over the halfway line. That is excellent bit of play. So he seems to certainly have good awareness. He's a good sniper. I think he had a decent-ish try scoring record, or certainly at one point he had a wee run of scoring. So yes, Charlie Shield needs, although I'm often the give them game time type, he's not had enough game time at all to really be starting a lot of games. So I think he does need top class experience beside him. Hopefully we'll see more of Shield like with Dobie, but Velcott certainly looks like he can certainly add more pace than Henry Purgos. Let's say that.
Yeah, I mean, he's 26. I think that just shows how long we've been talking about him and waiting for him to come through. I mean, Charlie Shield's only 23, so that kind of
It's
works
just
out okay.
the conveyor belt of quality Scottish scrum halves.
That's it.
That's wrong. And only
Even
two.
when we
pro
outsource it to England.
Yeah, and having only 2 pro teams. But hey, them's the breaks.
Yeah.
So,
But
Velcott's still up for grabs, isn't he? Yeah, he is.
yeah, Velcott still. Yeah, that's how he wouldn't be here otherwise. I don't think.
He's
Yeah, I think he was called into an English. I
been called
think
up for
he's basically
camps and
he's
stuff.
doing a Gary Graham really.
Aye.
But I think the problem. I think he's spoken
Well,
quite openly about the fact that he stayed. He couldn't accept a call up to Scotland. I think Townsend tried to call him up a couple of times, but I think he said in interviews before, if I accept the call up to Scotland, then it means it limits my contract opportunities down in England because I'm an English qualified player. So teams will happily sign me because they then get to tick a box that says
yeah, they
I'm
20. Was it 25 grand per player they get or something?
yeah, or something like that. So that's why he's quite open about this. Saying, well, it's going to affect my contract chances if I get called up for Scotland and then I
Then you're
try
out
and
of
get a contract with an English club. So, Craig, you back?
My apologies. My Wi-Fi just went pop and went completely off there for a second.
That's
so
fine.
my
I just
apologies.
thought you were stunned by my analysis of Blair Kinghorn.
I was it was I was agreeing that Blair Kinghorn actually did very, very well on the weekend. So it just it had a bit of a spasm.
While you're away, we were talking about Ben Velcott.
Mm.
And I mean, do you think? I mean, it's probably something to ask you. Do you think that is down to the quality of Ben Velcott as a player, or the tactics? Because it's quite hard to judge, isn't it? Because he's been asked to play a different game to what Henry Purgos was being asked to play under Richard Cockrell, and what Charlie Shields been asked to play under Richard Cockrell. So, do you think that's? I suppose it's probably a combination of the two, isn't it? That he's playing different tactics. But were you excited by him? Do you feel like that's a kind of an improvement player wise on what Embra already have?
Well, yeah, obviously he got man of the match, so he's done an incredibly good job on the weekend. I think his game plan. I think Mike Blair's kind of given a lot of the boys the opportunity to go and play what's in front of them. He was taking tap penalties on a regular, a couple of times just to, he saw some space and just went for it. He had a big run down, a fair run down at the Scarlets 22, just from a tap penalty, a tap and go penalty. So I think yes, I think Mike Blair's kind of, freed him a little bit, but again, Purgos came on. And for the 5-10 minutes he was on, he did the ball came, we were under the pump by Scarlets right at the end. The ball came to Purgos. What did Purgos do? Kick it back to Scarlets. And it's like, why are you kicking? There's 2 minutes to go. Why are you kicking the ball back to Scarlets? And it just, so I think I'm not saying
Richard Cockrell Stockholm syndrome. That's what it is.
It must be, because he's obviously he's got this moustache and haircut going on that seems to have affected it. Maybe it's like the criminal guy in The Simpsons. That when he got scalped, his hair attached onto Homer Simpson. I think it's similar, kind of similar like that. So affecting his brain. But no, it was just so frustrating because Purgos has been a great player. Don't get me wrong, and he has had a steady influence over Edinburgh at times when we needed a steady influence. But Velcott has come along and has shown him, okay, this is just one game, but he has shown him that I think Velcott's going to be the first pick every time.
Yeah. Anything more from Edinburgh for you, Craig, before we move on to Super 6?
No, I just one little thing, and it's to the fans of Edinburgh. I was amazed. We came out of the Lothian stand. My son and I stood for a wee while watching the players, and then we came out, and usually at the end of the game, you get a few people at the tunnel kind of milling about to get photos and everything. You can't do that just now because of COVID, etc. There was at least 750, maybe even 800 people all standing down the channel that they now walk from the stadium across the car park into the changing rooms, and they clapped all the Scarlets players through, all the referees through, and all the Edinburgh players got a huge. And the atmosphere was absolutely fantastic. And I just wanted to say a huge thanks to the Edinburgh fans, because it was just, as a fan myself and as a season ticket holder, it was just a lovely, lovely thing to see.
It was hard because we saw the stadium design. I think it's before your time on the podcast, Craig, and we looked at that and went, "That's weird." Right, that I couldn't detach myself from like the club setup you get, almost like a Berwick, where you've got to walk across the car park and then past the turnstile with everybody else onto the pitch. I'm thinking there's gonna be guys with boots and they'll be milling about with the fans, and this is gonna be weird walking from Murrayfield over a car park to the stand. But actually, to the credit, Edinburgh have made that what a real feature that is of the match day experience for the players and the fans. You've I suppose as well, for visiting teams, you've got to walk through a tunnel of fans before you enter the pitch, going for your warm-up and going to the game. There will be fans there probably heckling you a wee bit, having a wee bit crack, and then to be clapped back out again is quite nice as well. I was worried about how that would go, but it's nice to hear that they've come up with a plan for.
It was really good. It just added that a little bit extra, and it was fantastic. I'll tell you that one last thing. I know we're going to move on, but one surprising thing: my missus and my daughter were there because of the women's tickets that were given away free by Edinburgh, and they were in the director's box, and a certain Toonie was sitting behind them with the new attack coach for Scotland, speaking fluent French with the attack coach, and just sat, and that's all they spoke, French all night. So quite an interesting one. That they certainly are. It's going to be an interesting one. Apparently, he's very handsome, and I don't know where that comes from either. It's not.
I thought how they speak French. There might be spies.
He's South African.
I know, yeah. There might be Australian spies kicking about.
What common language do we have? South African and Scottish coaches. French? Aye, why not?
Yeah.
It's amazing. I think we've covered it already. Gregor Townsend's autobiography. There's a chapter there about the club car he gets whilst he's playing in France, and it's just phenomenal. Just read Gregor Townsend's autobiography, because there's a whole bit there about how he drives around a really crap club car. It's well worth a read. Super Six. Then I want to kind of just touch on the Super Six quite quickly. Did you have anything, Craig, talking point wise from the Super Six before we? I've got one big talking point I want to do at the end here, but
I was really impressed with Stirling County's turnaround. I told you, cut the grass and it'll get a bit better for them. And they cut the grass.
Somebody tweeted you and said they've cut the grass as well.
They've cut the grass, and they looked absolutely fantastic. It was a close game, but people like George Arnott, the second row, was just phenomenal. What a game he had. Their defence was better. Their attack was looking fabulous. It has looked quite good over the last few games, but their attack was very, very good. And Watsonians had their hands full at the weekend. So I thought Stirling County did an incredibly good job, and they were impressive.
I feel like
I was going to mention. Sorry, I was going to mention the grass weeks ago, but then I thought people think I'm absolutely mental, so I'm not going to say anything about it. No, I thought it was a bit long myself. Anyway, sorry, Cammy, carry on.
I was going to say the Stirling feel like the last couple of weeks that they're going to be one to watch for next season.
Yeah,
they've been quite inconsistent this year. They've kind of started quite well and then tailed off a bit, but it'll be interesting to see how they go next season.
Yeah.
I was quite frustrated, I think, with Southern Knights, and with AF to a certain extent, that just flew off that.
Mama, the Southern Knights.
Well done for getting the fan for audio listeners. Craig had a fan on hand. That's impressive. It's a commitment to the bitty, Craig. But yeah, yes, Mama, the Southern Knights. They just, I get it's something we've talked about before with the Super Six teams, and I think particularly with Ayr and Southern Knights is they just switch off sometimes, and all credit to Heriots. They played really well, but Southern Knights never should have let them in the way they did.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I was exciting rugby to watch Southern Knights scoring 2 tries in the last 2 minutes of the game to flatter the score, but they should never be in that position in the first place.
Yeah, Alex Ball, for example, the Heriots 9, he's a nice sniping run, and just absolutely scored that, took that try incredibly well, and he should never have got past the 3 people he got past. No. So yeah, just as you say, it was interesting. I think Freddie Owsley as well, the Southern Knights player, but he's also an Edinburgh player as well, or he's in the Edinburgh larger squad. He looked incredibly quick, so he'll be interesting to see too.
Yeah. Hello, Johnny. Johnny Mcginty is joining us.
Hello.
Good evening, Johnny. How was training, Johnny?
Good, actually. Yeah.
Good.
Nice to be back out. We've had a couple of weeks off, so
we're talking Super Six before we go into Hands in the Ruck. Do you have any observations from Super Six this time around?
Yeah, I seem to have jumped in at the exact point that I've made several times so far about Super Six, which is that they need to start learning to close out games.
Yeah.
And I don't I'm sure I've been over this numerous times, and you guys sound like you were just going over it when I came in, and I don't know how many more times I can say it.
Yeah, just see games out. Don't switch off in the last 2 minutes because it's gonna beat you. Ian, anything from you?
Not particularly, although obviously we've just seen the highlights, but I think the Bills scored 3 tries from Mauls. So I think the Bills are hitting form at a really good time. Their pack seems to be settled. Obviously, Fantini at open side is probably the best player in the league at the moment. And they also do have firepower in the backs as well. I think it's, they're hitting the form at the right moment. I think it's probably going to be sort of them and Knights.
That is going to be a tasty final.
Yep.
Given the form both teams.
Maybe I'll get to go to the goddamn stadium.
Yeah. God damn. My final point on this, because we're going to go and do Hands in the Ruck in a minute, we'll probably carry on the discussion into Hands in the Ruck, is it was the SRU AGM this week, and there was a motion from GHK in Glasgow to abolish the Super Six and replace it with an inter-district championship. And honestly, I wanted to kill myself because it's the tinfoil blazer brigade, right? And I'll tell you something. By accident, I stumbled across a Facebook group called WTF Is It With Scottish Rugby? And I thought, hey, something about Scottish Rugby. I'll sign up to this.
Bell.
Yeah, I'll sign up to this. I'll see how it goes. I'll see what's the crack in here. It's always interesting. I like Scottish Rugby Forum. It's good because I don't necessarily join in, but I just like seeing what's kind of grinding people's gears, what's getting people interested in Scottish Rugby. And
what's got their hands in people's ruck.
Yeah, you sometimes get bits of news that you miss from club rugby and stuff. But I thought, well, here's another forum to join on Facebook. And it only clicked with me when it was the AGM what that group was about, because the entire purpose of the group was something to do with getting rid of Super Six and replacing it with a district championship. The group were also on about replacing the administrative functions and legal functions of Scottish Rugby with some third party. And then also, what was the other point?
It's GHA, not GHK. Just
GHA, sorry, not GHK.
Yeah.
GHA. And then they had like a third. Oh no, that was it. Where's all the money being spent from COVID? Right. These are the big main 3 talking points in this group. And I just went in there. I was like, "What's going on with this? Right? Can somebody explain all this to me?" And I got booted from the group. Right, just for asking, like, "What's the crack here, boys?" I genuinely think that group have coordinated through the clubs so that there are a handful of people in positions of power within clubs in Scottish rugby, or who know people who are in positions of power in Scottish rugby, who should not be allowed to operate self-service tills and supermarkets, but yet are allowed to give their views at the AGM of a major sporting union, right? These people have, like, they must have tinfoil, not just tinfoil hats, tinfoil blazers, tinfoil trousers, because look, we've talked about the Super Six, our misgivings about the Super Six before. It's by far not a perfect tournament. Still questions about where this is going longer term and the combination of the club game. But these guys are trying to there are people now in Scottish Rugby trying to take Scottish Rugby back to the Stone Age. The whole thing with replacing Super Six with the Inter-District Championship, so far as I could tell from the discussions I had with these guys, was we think the Premiership is just as good as Super Six, which is demonstrably not true. The thing about, like, don't use COVID money from the government to pay for foreign-born players is just absolute peak gammon boomer crap, right? The third thing about the whole, like, we don't like the legal advice that was given, so we should sack the entire legal team and administrative team within Scottish Rugby. And then they're going, I don't understand why everybody got upset with that we asked for them all to get sacked. For Christ's sake, grow up.
The idea of getting rid of the pro teams as well is absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, they replace it with one pro team because and genuinely in this group, somebody said this to me, that worked in Argentina. Like, well, how many pro teams, how many pro franchises do Argentina have now? They have 0.
Yeah.
And they're so insignificant, they're not even invited to photo calls for competitions that they're in.
They wanted to get rid of Glasgow and Edinburgh, make one pro team, and all the Glasgow and Edinburgh players would play in the Premiership for the right to play in the pro select team, right? And we just talked about how Fantini's the best player in the Super Six, so that's who we're asking Jamie Ritchie, Hamish Watson, Matt Ferguson to go up against. Do you know who the best player in the URC is? Sia Khaleesi or Dwayne Vermeulen. Or Josh van der Fleer, Josh Navidi, and you want to take them away from playing against those guys to play against the Super Six players and then expect Scotland to remain competitive. It's bonkers.
Yeah.
I think, Martin Bell makes a point. Says the admin legal one was actually suggested that the SRU explore the cost savings of outsourcing legal advice would deliver. Keith Wallace of Haddington was proposing that, and he seems a sensible guy. I'm not saying there wasn't some sense behind it, and I think the problem is that with these things is they get hijacked by these utter madmen. And so maybe there is a thing about outsourcing legal advice to an external organization and that being cost saving, and maybe it does give you some sense of impartiality. From personal experience, from work experience, it doesn't, because outsourcing it just means it's worse because they're not working with you day to day. They don't understand the inner workings of your organization. It's a bit crap.
Thing is, Cammy, if you want to lose money or pay a lot of money to someone who isn't going to give you as good a job as you already have, please outsource it. It's well known within this country. The issue I talked to 2 different presidents of 2 different clubs who came home early because it got to a point where there was just the lawyers talking to each other, and in the AGM, and they kind of went, "Why are we here?"
Yeah,
and we've got a long drive. We're heading home, and it's an AGM is for open discussion. I don't have a problem with that, but when you get to a point where people are switching off, know your audience.
Yeah, I think that's it's a waste of everybody's time. There are far better uses of the AGM was about a bunch of idiots hijacking it for trying to stop foreign players being imported to Scotland and replacing the Super Six with an district championship. Which, it's just I don't know. There are far better uses of the AGM's time than talking about those issues. And this is, this is how bad things got. I have sympathy for Mark Dodson and having to deal with that crap. That's what they've driven me to. That's how low things have got. And then the other thing they do, which is really, before we go, the other thing they do that's really super sad on the Facebook group is whenever there's an article on the offside line, they ask all their friends to go and comment on it because they go, there's lots of people commenting on this article in favour of what the SRU is doing. Let's get as many of us over there as possible and disagree with us. They're basically 14-year-old girls on WhatsApp.
What you got,
coordinating tax. Then that's harsh on 14-year-old girls. I'll apologise to all 14-year-old girls right now, but that is essentially
Beyonce's
what
Twitter mob called. Except, crap because they're not Beyonce.
So yeah,
and of course, there's certain offside line articles they just they won't share, isn't there?
I know. There is.
Will we touch on that later?
By certain people, we can touch on that later, Ian. We'll touch on that later. But yeah, there's certain rugby journalists they just don't have time for. But we'll touch on that later on. Anyway,
too much.
I wanted to talk about this in the main pod because I just want to let people know that these people walk amongst us.
Yeah, man, I tell you.
Anyway, so that's it for this week. We'll be back next week for our main listeners with more on the URC, a bit more on Super 6, and we'll catch up with some other bits and bobs of news. For those of you who are listening to Patreon, if you're watching live, we'll be back in about normally a couple of minutes. We normally have a little comfort break, go and get a glass of water. Johnny's just joined us. He doesn't need one. But for those who aren't on the Patreon, we'll say goodbye.
Prepared.
Oh, Ian's got the original Iron Brew. We'll get on to the scarcity of Iron Brew in your hands in the ruck. For the moment, though, we'll say it's goodbye from me and goodbye from Johnny, Ian, and Craig.
Cheery
Bye.
Bye.
We're still live.
This takes ages to just cast.